Good morning, it's Brian, Attorney Leaf Realty Group, and I am here this morning with Frank Stankiewicz from Green to Ground Electrical. He's based here in Front Royal. And Frank, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Frank, first, why don't we start off by letting you tell us about who is Frank?
I'm a guy that moved here back in 2002 to Virginia, originally from Miami, Florida. Grew up down there until the age of about 14, 15. Moved to Front Royal back in 2016 after a stint in the Centerville, Manassas area. Been an electrician for 17 years now. I have a beautiful wife. We live on High Knob off of 55 here in Front Royal. We love the mountain life, love the nature. I'm a big community-based guy. Love baseball. I coach Little League baseball down here. I assist in some travel baseball so that we give kids an opportunity for development and not just the opportunity to just play rec ball. So youth is a big thing that I'm a part of. I mentored adolescent teens from the age 13 to 18 for probably about 6 or 7 years. So that's where the passion comes in with working with the adolescent teens in the baseball field and not just teaching them baseball, but helping them with their character, helping them build into good people so the community has something better to offer them how I found it. I'm very active in my church. I go to Virginia Hills Church off Rockland Road. Eric Redblaw is my pastor, great man, great community. Me and my wife do a lot there, from serving coffee to doing the media and slides. My wife does a lot of stuff there with the kids. So again, just always trying to give back to this community. We also are in Rotary through my company and through myself, my wife and I. We do a lot with Rotary. We're part of the Northern Shenandoah Valley group. We give probably half of our month to that group when it comes down to serving meals, doing things like drives for sock drives with the WASP program, giving to the thermal shelter here in the Front Royal, working with the community table on the first Monday of every month. So I'm just a give back type of guy. That's just who I've been. My upbringing through my childhood was always giving back through the mentors and people that brought me up in the community that I lived in there. So it's just my second nature to come into a community like this and want to support. And I just appreciate the opportunity to meet with you today and be able to talk about who I am and what I offer. And I know that you do so much, and your wife, Margie, you guys are great here for the community, and we just appreciate you.
It's like here. So now, of course, I think we first met when I was giving your name when I was doing a renovation project on my house. You came in and did and actually it was kind of a funny story, because when I was thinking about doing the renovation work on my house, I knew that there were some aspects of the electrical project that were a little beyond mine. We needed a sub panel put in and some things. I can do simple work. And I remember coming in and telling you what I needed done and asking you to talk me out of doing it myself.
100%.
And thank God that you did, because you all did such a good job on it. And when it came time for us to purchase this building, of course, with our business here, you're the first ones we called to come in and evaluate the electrical situation in this building. It was built in 1957, I think. And
yeah,
we ended up ripping out every scrap of wiring from one end to the other, redoing all of it. So it's all brand new now. How did you get into electrical work?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to work on your home and your business. That is who we are as a business at Green to Ground, is we always want to strive from the home to the business and help you as well as ourselves go through this community and make it better. So first of all, thank you. But how I got into it was I was just a kid, coming out of high school. I actually dropped out of high school when I was 17. Had no idea where I was going, what I was doing. And there was a program out there called Job Corps. And so Job Corps was a government-funded program, and they gave you a vocational-based type study. And so they gave you the opportunity to learn a facility maintenance program where I obtained my A and B certification. So I got the opportunity to learn drywall, plumbing, electrical, carpentry. I painted. We did all different sorts of things to masonry. And so when I came out of Job Corps, a friend of mine had a business, and it was an electrical company. And so he said, hey, you're crafty with your hands, you're pretty smart, you're going to have a job. And so I started doing site work where I was doing pole lights, and that turned into working with a business where all we did was build police stations and different government facilities. And then from there, we went from the outside work to the inside work. And, that's where I really got to shine, where I'm detail oriented. I communicate well, and, I have a good foresight on understanding what needs to happen in a project.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was really, really glad about, is the fact that, I could present you with my idea about what I knew needed to be done, and you could flesh it out and tell me where are all the details. What have you forgotten? What could you do a little better? What are some better ideas? Just to flesh it all out and take that, my chicken scratching on a piece of graph paper and turning it into reality.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of where I came from. I have a diverse outlook on the electrical industry based on my experience. So when I tell you I have 17 years experience in this trade, that 17 years experience is not doing just one thing. That 17 years experience is working in commercial settings, doing backup generator systems, working with lighting systems, creating lighting designs with architects and engineers, coming into the home and understanding energy efficiency, versus aesthetic, really understanding electricity and understanding when you're doing electrical work, there's functionality and then there's the aesthetic of what people want to see, and trying to marry those two things is what people really want, because nobody wants to walk into a space that looks industrial when they're walking into your office, but you at the same time can only work with the existing conditions you have. So where do we meet functionality with your aesthetic? That's really the name of the game with most people, to make their space what they want it to be. And that's what we try to deliver for you, even from your kitchen and your addition to your space that you work in on the everyday now.
Electrical work is one of those things that is a mystery to most people.
It is.
Obviously, it's something that can be dangerous if mishandled, because it can literally kill you without a thought if done improperly. What kind of safety precautions would you recommend for the average homeowner, and what kind of certifications and training do you all undergo in order to work with electrical equipment?
So those are two really good questions. The first question is what do we have that certifies us? So what we have is we have a master's license in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. We're working on our West Virginia right now. That master's license comes with, the OJT, on the job training. That master's license comes with obtaining a journeyman license, which also had to go with the hours of on the job training, plus the 4 years of apprenticeship that had to be done in order to get that type of a certification. So when you start as an apprentice in the industry, you start at the bottom level, you start working your way up. So that's through taking classes, and making sure that your vocational training comes through the actual theory, the process of how electricity works. You want to learn that, so that's how you can go out and apply that to troubleshooting. Then there's the on-the-job training, all the applicable things that you go through on a day-to-day basis, the curveballs of what I call it, understanding how to do the ebbs and flows of moving through adversity, understanding that not everything is going to look the same, but is also going to be able to be applied the same. So when we talk about experience, that's what a company like Green to Ground brings you, because it doesn't just have 1 or 2 levels. It has multi-levels, for the fact that I hold the masters, the guys that I have in my business hold the journeyman licenses, and all we try to do as a company is grow through within. So we bring in guys at a bottom level and bring them through the apprenticeship, so that when they get to the point where they're taking on a job, they're not taking on a job of just, I've seen this done before, but of something of education that can actually walk you through as the homeowner and build that type of confidence and trust to know that when we do walk in there, we're going to give you the peace of mind, one circuit at a time, per se. That's our saying. So, and then the second part of that is that, when we apply safety, we're going to come in and we're going to educate your homeowner. We're going to come in with a 56-point inspection. It's going to go through your panel. It's going to check your smoke detectors. It's going to make sure you got the proper grounding. It's going to make sure that, if you don't know about surge protection, it's going to teach you about surge protection. And if you don't know about surge protection, it's what protects the things you spend the most money on. As we move forward in this life, everything goes digital. A surge protector on your panel would protect that with a small fee. So we're educating, we're protecting, and then we're leaving you with the opportunity of knowledge to be able to absorb financially whatever that is, based on a red light, green light method, that, hey, if it's red, it needs to be addressed. If it's yellow, it's probably something you want to take care of in the future. And if it's green, you have nothing to worry about. if you could have that type of knowledge as a homeowner, you could have the knowledge you need to move forward in your home and making sure that you're taking care of the proper procedures to be proactively effective to take care of your home.
Frank, from your perspective, when is the time for somebody to really call in a professional? Because there are a lot of jobs that, you know, your basic home handyman might feel confident in handling. For example, changing out a light fixture or, you know, repairing a switch or something like that. Is that ever a good idea to do that yourself? Or at what point should one be evaluating it to really have somebody with training and expertise to come in and do it properly?
You know, it's kind of a trick question, Brian, to be honest with you. I would say that, you know, if I answered that question from a point of my experience, anything's easy, right? But what I always want to make sure is that nobody gets hurt. And, you know, you can always tell somebody to turn off a breaker or make sure the switch is off, but you can't ever prevent somebody from turning it back on when you're not looking, or, you know, when you do turn it on, maybe not know what you have disconnected or what put back together. So I always advise that you do bring a professional in anytime you're dealing with electricity. The second point to that reason is that you can't see electricity. And so if you can't see it and you don't understand it, then you're already at two disadvantages walking in that situation.
That's a very good point.
And so with that being said, I would just advise that you always bring a professional in, and at a minimum, just get the advice, you know, get the understanding, gain some clarity. And, you know, maybe it is something that they tell you, hey, you could take care of this, but at least you'd have the proper understanding of how to take care of it, and not just going off your own thoughts of what, you know, what would be based on your own opportunity and ability.
Or following the pretty pictures, the pretty colored pictures in the book.
Yeah, YouTube loves that. Yeah, YouTube is the thing, but YouTube always doesn't know what you're standing in the moment until you actually are standing in it.
That's a very good.
Yeah.
Okay, Frank, what are the most common kind of questions that you get asked as an electrician?
You know, I would say, you know, there's probably a couple of them. But one that always stands out to me is like, you know, GFIs, you know, GFI protection. You know, it's a common thing because it's used in a lot of the areas that we do a lot of work in, right? So like GFI protection, you know, we're always in a kitchen, you know, we're using the countertop outlets, you know, we're in a bathroom, you know, we're using the vanity sink, you know, we're outside, we're using Christmas lights, we're plugging in our tools, plugging in our stuff. And so the question is why don't they work? Why are they there? You know, people wonder, you know, they're at a point of inconvenience rather than being at a point of a safety factor. So GFI protection is always the thing. I'll tell you the answers that I give people is that when you're around water, you need a GFI to protect you and the equipment, you know. The button is not an inconvenient moment. It's a moment to save you in a lot more opportunity of failure to occur. So what I explain to people is that, you know, if your outlets are out in those certain places I just mentioned, like the outside, you know, your garage, you know, your kitchen, your bathroom, you know, go look for your GFI, press the button, reset it. You know, that would be your opportunity to save you a service call fee. You know, and sometimes even if I'm on the phone with someone and I'm explaining to them that this is a GFI issue, you know, believe the guy that you're talking to, because you called me for a reason, you know. It saves you and everybody else a lot of money and headache. But it is the number one thing that we get called on a lot is those outlets don't work in those areas. And it's just as easy as pressing a button. So I think that would be the one reoccurring thing that comes up all the time. The second one would be lighting in a house. You know, everybody has different opinions and different, you know, preferences. And so working from, you know, even in this room that we're sitting in now, you know, we spoke about all the different options when we were looking at it, you know.
We don't at them too.
Yeah, you know, there's coming off the ceiling with a surface mount. There's pendant lighting, you know. There's track lighting, you know. There's the opportunity to be able to rearrange it anytime you want, you know. And then there's the flush ceiling where you put the wafer recess lights, you know, where you walk in and you keep the fluidity of the room, you know. So those are things that we always talk about too when it comes down to electricity. And that's just kind of on a more homeowner level, you know, in the residential side, because, you know, that's really where I get the opportunity to do a lot of design, you know, because on our commercial side that we do work in, we're most of the time following something that's been engineered, something that's had an architect that's been involved, you know. So we're just basically bridging the gap from somebody's vision and design into reality. But when I get to work with homeowners, you know, like your clients, we get the opportunity to really dig in deep and give them the vision and give them the opportunity to make that vision reality.
And one of the things that we have seen since COVID, since the real estate market really started to heat up, is what I consider an unfortunate trend, and sometimes it's dangerous, in that people have oftentimes been waiving their inspections when they're purchasing homes and buildings. So, I mean, I always feel that the right to inspect a building is an important one because it gives me a client, or because that gives our client the opportunity to be fully informed, or as informed as possible, about what they're buying.
100%.
When you have somebody who's moving into a new building, commercial, home, whatever, what are some things that they should look at in terms of what are some of the things that you've seen that you would consider to be perhaps dangerous or unfortunate situations that people have walked into, and how would your average homeowner recognize those things?
I would say, Brian, that, we're going to go back to our inspection process. When all those home inspections were being waived and all these people were buying in blind and they were just doing everything they could to get that home, we came in with this inspection at a low cost. We do a 56-point move where we go through everything extensively. And the homeowner needs to understand that if you see an open, exposed wire box, the common one is that there's no grounding to the panel. Wires are no grounding because the landscape guy came by when they were doing the setup of the home, and they literally didn't want that wire in the way, and they took it with them, or over time it got hit and cut and nobody thought any different. Those are things that you got to think about. Double tap breakers, these are what those inspections really gave the homeowner power back in their hand for, but in the sense of an opportunity for a homeowner to have that red flag moment to think of something, I'd go back to the GFI, what I just talked about, knowing their protection, and just the simplest thing of, do I have a smoke detector in the room? Is my family safe? Is there any opportunity to alert someone if something happens? Those are the simplistic ways that I always go through with homeowners and say, hey, these are the proactive things you could do, and if somebody doesn't know, the building code actually states that you have to have an interconnected smoke alarm system. It does not state that it has to be hardwired. So if you ever get into a remodel situation, you're working with a client and they say to you that they don't have any smoke detectors, we can come in with a low cost and a low disadvantage to them. And I say it that way because if we had to run wire, we'd have to tear up the plaster. We'd have to mess with their integrity of their home to be able to get it there. And we'd be able to give them the same type of protection that they would need to keep their family from any type of tragedy.
I kind of learned that lesson the hard way with one of my homes. So doing some work in the basement, doing some not renovation. We were actually building out the basement. And I was working in the area where I was putting trim down, and there were some exposed wires to one of the new outlet boxes, and I knew they were turned off because none of that area hadn't livened up yet. And in order to just double check, I touched it with a screwdriver. It blew the screwdriver in half.
Yeah.
When that electrical search hit it, which fortunately did not hurt me or kill me, but I learned the hard way to include an electrical tester in my toolbox. So even though I'm not doing electrical work myself, at least now I can put a little pen on it, and it'll light up a red.
Yes.
As opposed to trying to electrocute myself at the same time.
Yeah, assuming an electrical is never easy. Like I said, you can't see it.
Gosh.
And you don't know where it is, when it is, and what's going to happen when it happens. There's a funny meme online that shows the electrician not there anymore, but just his 2 feet. And it's not funny if in the real mode, but in the meme, it's hilarious. But nobody thinks about it. That could actually happen. So I always tell people, back to our last thought process of hiring a professional person to do your electrical work. It's just good, smart practice to
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of clients who have benefited from getting a professional opinion on things. We see, as a realtor, I'm not an electrician, I'm not a home inspector. There's a lot of things that I am not. But at the same time, what we are supposed to do when we're walking through a home and find is to, if we see something that is a potential problem, advise them to get it evaluated.
Yeah.
One of the things that we'll oftentimes look at, where's the service panel, and is there anything that looks out of place with
Yeah.
I mean, a standard home inspection will cover, having it looked at. But we were in a home the other day when the service panel looked fine. It was, house was built in the 60s. It had probably been updated some. However, there was a sub panel at the other end of the room, and it was a National Pacific panel, which many people around here don't know what that means. I happen to have seen them before because we ran into it in another house. And those panels are obsolete. I mean, you're probably familiar with it.
Yeah.
They're obsolete and can fail on you.
Yeah.
And it's always recommended to replace those things.
Yeah.
So even though it looked beautiful and pristine, it looked like it was working fine, and it probably was, but it was a potential failure point that really needed to be addressed as part of that purchase if the client decided to go forward.
100%. Yeah, we run into that all the time, especially in these older areas. Back when I worked in Alexandria Falls Church and those areas, we started seeing those because obviously, you watch the trajectory of building in the areas. And, as I've come out here to Fort Royal, we found a lot of those Federal Pacifics. And the biggest thing to those is that, they found that they have a failure rate higher than the allowable, And I say that because it's honest. There's a certain rate that you're allowed to get up to before they can't leave them on the market. And so that's what's going on is they've discontinued these panels and breakers and not allowed you to go any further with them. But there's something that people really don't know is that there's actually a life expectancy to every panel. We don't realize that in the moment because we say, oh, if it ain't broke, why fix it? But over time, you have to understand, just like anything, you're putting a strain and a drain on that equipment, just like when we talk about our preventative maintenance packages that we do, we come in and we actually tighten down on the breakers. We put the deox on the aluminum so that it doesn't continue to break down, because as years go on and heat builds on those wires, it dries them up and starts the decomposition. And that aluminum on metal, starts that process. So we come in and we fully address those things and bring your panel back up to as best that it can be. And at that point, we understand, okay, is this panel ready for an upgrade? Does it need to be replaced? Where are we at with this panel right now? Because what we see in these areas is that people just like to add if there's space, and nobody really knows what they have until somebody professional looks at it, So in the thought of the Federal Pacific, and in the thought of how the life expectancy of a panel is, you should really be regularly thinking about what's going on with my electrical system, especially if that house has been built 10, 15, 20 years, because you might not have been the original owner and you might not think there's anything going on down there, but it might not needed to be addressed at that point, but it needs to be addressed now, or over time as settlements gone on, things have come loose. And now we have arcing, we have heat factor, we have things that could go potentially wrong. Those things need to be looked at every once in a while. So just like settlement on your foundation, when you look at those cracks and you worry what could happen, that same type of settlement happens inside of a pan. Because those same vibrations still cause effect inside things like electrical pan.
Yeah, this really is something interesting to think about, because I believe that we think about, a lot of mechanical systems in our homes as being static. I mean, the electrical system, I haven't touched it, therefore nothing should be wrong with it.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
The plumbing, I haven't touched it, nothing should be wrong with it. However, just over time, there is movement through it. It's just electrons, even if it's just the heat and heat cycle. So we can see degradation of those systems just from being old.
So think about one thing, and I'll leave you with this on this panel. If you were to think about where you see your electrical panels when you're walking homes, they're in garages and in basements where there's moisture and there's different temperature drops and uprises, right? So all of that is putting that panel through that same type of atmosphere as you're going through the seasons. So that panel is living through that. And so when we talk about not knowing something, think about the moisture on the inside of the bus bar after 20, 30 years. And that's where we see discoloration, There's too many times I walk into a situation where the panel looks beautiful from the front, but the entire bottom of it's corroded out. You know why? Because there's water running in through the concrete porous wall that it's mounted to, and it's literally just seeping in through the metal, and now it's corroding out the bottom of the panel. But if you've never opened the box, you would never know the difference. Most people put boxes around the box or a painting on over so you don't see it. You know, so yeah, it is something of a forgotten thought. It's not like your HVAC system, you know. I guess you would go to your plumbing if your water heater was breaking down or leaking. You know, it's the same type of thing. You know, something has to happen for you to think about it. You should always think about it from the perspective of you don't want it to happen on the electrical system, you know.
Yeah, because a minor problem with electrical can turn into a house burning down. Look,
the extreme is there, exactly. Mm-hmm. And you have a chance to prevent it. Yeah, so we at Green to Ground have a philosophy of not over exaggerating something when it comes down to our inspections. You know, if it's a new home, it should be checked. You know, to have the understanding as a homeowner, you should have the knowledge and the education to know what you've just walked into. But if you lived in the home for 15, 20 years, you know, a good theory of practice is about every 5 to 7 years, you know. And the reason is because you typically live life in 5 to 7 year increments, you know. Kids graduate high school, you know, kids go to college, you know, you downsize, maybe you upsize, you know. So bringing an electrician in every 5 to 7 years is probably the best practice. When you're looking at the opportunity of investigating the thought of how do I, know to change my panel, you know, through those inspections, you'll understand how to know when it's time. But if you haven't had somebody look at it and it's been over 15, 20 years, you know, the chances are you might need to change that panel. 20 years is a long time in the thought of hot and cold, you know. We see that in other areas of construction, so we can use those as examples, you know. 20 years in a home will change the way that the door is framed. It'll change the way that the concrete is settled, you know. It changes the way that the window closes, you know. So there's no difference. Your hot water heater has probably a 20-year warranty on it, you know. The panels are the exact same. The breakers need to be inspected, you know. As they get hot and cold, you know, they lose their ratings. So as a breaker trips, you know, a lot of times people say, come into their homes, I've lived here 10, 15 years. That breaker tripped 3 times. Every time that the breaker trips, it gets weaker and it gets weaker. So do you want something that has a good full capacity of function, or do you want something that's weaker? You know, that's something you talk to an electrician about in an inspection. Mm-hmm. You know, that's how you become more proactive in making the preventative opportunity to not have a failure. You know, mm-hmm. So yeah, those are my practices through the company, because I think that 5 to 7 years is the best time to take a look at things, because things could happen. You know, mm-hmm. And it's not something that's, you know, you have businesses out there, and I never cast shade on businesses, but you have businesses out there that try to do these membership programs that come in every year, and it's like, if you're doing that much movement, then you have that many contractors already looking at things. Mm-hmm. You know, if your house is just sitting, it's not an HVAC unit. You need to have that looked at. You know, it may be a plumbing opportunity. You need to have that looked at. This is something that you just need to always be educating and be aware of, so that things don't happen and they slip underneath the rug, and now all of a sudden we have a big problem.
What advice might you give to somebody who's interested in following the electrical field as a career?
My advice is to do it. It's a great career. You know, if I'm speaking from the heart, you know, I like I said, I dropped out of high school. You know, I was never the fastest. I was never, I was never the most confident on a ladder. You know. The electrical trade gives you the opportunity to be able to choose different things and still be within the same electrical trade. If you're not good at bending pipe, well, you can pull in a C cable. If you're not good in a building working with industrial items, well, then you can go to a home. If you like engines, you can build generators. If you love innovation and technology, well, let's go solar and let's make this EV thing better than it could ever be. You know, if you like lighting up people's lives and putting the bright shine moment in their businesses, then why not? I have found in my career that I can serve my community, I can be people-oriented, I can build better every time, not just through projects, but through my own team. And I'm an electrician by trade. So if you want this type of a career where you can just do anything and be anybody, well, then be an electrician. You know, they always said we were the smartest guys on the job site.
I am sure they do. Frank, I mean, this has been really enlightening to me, and I appreciate that you're taking the time to come out and talk to us today. We definitely are going to put your contact information down below here, so anybody needs help, commercial, residential, call Green to Ground. These guys are great, and they are going to serve you well. And again, thank you for your time, and we appreciate it.
100%. No, thank you for letting me be here. And I just want to take 1 minute, so you're giving it to me, to thank the community. We just found out today that we were voted 3 years in a row Best of Warren County 2023. And so that's through the community in the emulation of how we do our work and serve you guys. And so whoever's watching, I just want to say thank you for that, because it means a lot to me and a lot to my team, because we strive every year to be that. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.